And let's go through those Google Slides now, just as a review of what he just went over then. And we are going to start right here with lever systems. Lever is a simple machine consisting of a beam or a rigid rod pivoted at a fixed hinge or a fulcrum. When he said the fulcrum is in the middle or anything is in the middle, he means that it's in the middle between 2 points. So it may not necessarily be exactly in the middle, okay? Because as you'll see with levers, we need to be able to have advantage, and that might mean that we've got to have a longer rod or a shorter rod depending on the resistance or the load that's at the other end. So looking at this, do you think this guy could move this rock with this?
Yes.
With this, yes. Yeah, exactly. So a lever is a rigid body capable of rotating on a point itself, such as the fulcrum, on the basis of the location of the fulcrum, the load, and the effort. So depending on where they're located, the lever is divided into 3 types. Archimedes, a famous Greek historian, ancient Greek historian, said, if you give me a lever and a place to stand, I could move the world. But where would he stand? And how big would that lever have to be? But, physically speaking, that probably is true. Probably if you had a lever long enough and a place to stand, you could move the world. Nobody's ever been able to prove it.
There's no place in the space to stand.
No, there's no place to stand. And, do we have a lever long enough that could lift a weight like the world? So most skeletal muscles move using leverage, and that's why we're studying levers with skeletal muscles and bones, because our skeletal muscles use leverage. So the 3 components of a lever are first the rigid bar, and that corresponds to a bone that moves on a fixed point called a fulcrum or a joint, okay? So the joint is the fulcrum, the bone is the rigid bar. The effort is supplied by muscle contraction. In this case, the effort is supplied by this man pushing down on this force. So the effort is supplied by muscle contraction applied to the lever to move the resistance or the load. So we use a couple of words interchangeably here. Load is also known as resistance. Effort is also known as force, okay? So the load, which is the resistance, is the muscle or the bone, the tissues, and then any added weight, okay? So if I'm lifting this weight, this is the resistance or the load, okay? So the load is the resistance, which entails the bone, the muscle tissue, and then any added weight that is moved by the effort. Levers allow given effort to move heavier loads or to move loads farther or faster. So it depends on the fulcrum's position relative to the load and the effort. So when we're talking about the efficiency or the advantage of levers, we are talking about the position of each one of those items, the load, the lever, the effort, and the load. So it depends on the fulcrum position relative to the load and the effort. So mechanical advantage is also known as a power lever, and this is when the load is close to the fulcrum with effort far from the fulcrum, like our picture here. The load and the end of that lever is close to the fulcrum. And he's got a nice long pole that the further distance that he would have, the more advantage he would have in moving that load. So mechanical advantage or a power lever, the load is close to the fulcrum with the effort far from the fulcrum. And so this takes a smaller effort that can move a larger load, this type of lever. Mechanical disadvantage, also known as a speed lever, is the load is far from the fulcrum and with effort close to the fulcrum. So if this guy set his whole thing up, and let me go to the next slide to show that. Here the load is far from the fulcrum with the effort closer to the fulcrum. The load is moved rapidly, as it would be in this, if this was actually happening. And you guys have all seen those gymnasts that do these, or acrobats that use this kind of lever. The load is far from the fulcrum with the effort closer to the fulcrum, and the load is moved rapidly over a long distance, and this offers a wider range of motion. Because if they set this up in the opposite direction, she wouldn't go as far as what they're wanting her to go. They want her to flip up backwards and land up on a platform or somewhere. And if they switched this where the fulcrum was closer to her, she wouldn't go as far. Does that make sense, Ben? So the basic principles of levers, effort that is farther than the load from the fulcrum, the lever operates at a mechanical advantage, but effort that is nearer than the load to the fulcrum, the lever operates at a mechanical disadvantage. So this one is more a mechanical disadvantage than this one here. This is more of a mechanical advantage. So lever, let's see, I just went over that. So there are 3 classes of levers, like he went over in the video. The 3 classes of levers are based on the relative position of the effort, fulcrum, and load. It depends on where they're positioned. So a first class lever, the fulcrum, is between the load and the effort, and these are all on the test too. So the first class lever, the fulcrum is between the load and the effort. And for example, a seesaw, where you have 2 people on each, 1 person on each end, and they are going back and forth. And they also give an example of scissors are a first class lever. And this is when, like he said, remember first class is F, the fulcrum is in the middle between the load and the effort. So our body example of a first-class lever, and he cited this same one, a first-class lever system raises your head off your chest. The posterior neck muscles provide the effort. The atlanto-occipital joint is the fulcrum, which is what your head is setting on when you're nodding yes or when you're nodding yes. And the weight to be applied is lifting your facial skeleton. So that is a first-class lever, then, or that way. But that's a first-class lever. You guys see that? Fulcrum in the middle, load and effort on the ends. Does that make sense, then? The second-class lever is like he said, is R. Remember, we're spelling out free with 1 E, F-R-E. So second class is R. This is when the resistance is in the middle. The load is between the fulcrum and the effort. So, for example, wheelbarrows, like he showed, or standing on your toes. So the the second class leverage is exerted when you stand tiptoe. The effort is exerted by the calf muscles pulling upward on the heel, and the joints of the ball of the foot are the fulcrum. That's what you're standing on, is the joints right behind your toes, also known as the ball of the foot. So the joints of the ball of the foot are the fulcrum. The weight of the body pushing down on your heel, on your ankles, is the load then. Okay? Does that make sense? Then that's a second class lever. And then third class lever is the arrangement of the elements is load, effort, fulcrum, and this is when the E is, the effort is in the middle. So effort is applied between the fulcrum and the load. For example, tweezers or the forceps or the tongs that he was talking about, that's a third class lever. And most of our skeletal muscles work on this principle. Fulcrum, remember the joints are the fulcrum. The load is out here. The effort is right here. So in the body, flexing the forearm by the biceps brachii muscle exemplifies a third class leverage. The effort is exerted on the proximal radius of the forearm. The fulcrum is the elbow joint, and the load is the hand or whatever's in the hand in the distal end of the forearm. Then, okay, so this is a third class lever or lever. So the mechanical, let me go back to that one. The mechanical disadvantage, like we said, we're speed levers. The force is lost, but speed and range of motion are gained, movement are gained. The systems operating under mechanical advantage or power levers are slower but more stable. And these are used where strength is a priority. So that's basic principles of levers, and I would review that video. I've posted it, like I said, in the Google Classroom for you guys to go back through. And there are many other videos too about levers if you're still feeling like you need a little more clarification then. So does all that make sense, guys? So I'm going to go through just a few more. We're going to get started on groups of muscles. And I just have a few more slides to go through to get this started. And then we will finish up for the day. So again, how many muscles do we have in our bodies? About 600, yeah. And they are grouped by function and by their location. Muscle tables, and let me make sure you guys all see where I am in your notes here.
It says anterior view. Is that what
We're under, oops, that one. Yes, yep, that's where we're at. Most of these sections are titled, well, that says posterior though, doesn't it? No wonder you were trying to figure out where I was. Well, that should say, where's the anterior guy? I lost him. Oh. Well, anterior guy's not there. I'll see if I can find him. So we have 600 muscles grouped by function and location. Muscle tables that you see in books usually include the following information. The description, which includes the location relative to other muscles, the origin and insertion, usually a joint between the origin and the insertion, the actions or the movement that contraction causes of those muscles, and then the innervation. And I believe that is the information that is asked in your Meet the Muscles group too. So innervation is the name of the major nerve that supplies that muscle or those muscles. Innervation, how it's innervated, what nerves supply those muscles. So some tips for learning muscles: be aware of information learned from the muscle's name. So look at the muscle's name, and very often it tells you where it is or what it does, like we talked about how muscles are named. So be aware of information learned from the muscle's name. Read the description in the table, and these tables are all in your book, in your ebook or your textbook. Read the description in the table, identify the muscle on the figure, and that helps to relate the location and the description, as does that packet that I gave you on Meet the Muscles, and then putting together our muscles on our skeleton. Relate the muscle's location and the attachments to its action. So why would that muscle be where it is, and why would it do what it's doing, what it's supposed to be doing? Act out the movements on yourself. That's a really great way to learn your muscles, especially some of those muscles that are deeper in than others. As you are learning the muscles, feel those muscles moving when you're learning muscles like for your respiratory system. Take some deep breaths and imagine what that muscle is doing as you're learning about it too. So feel for those muscles contracting beneath the skin as you're flexing those, your biceps. Feel those muscles too. Feel that action like we did yesterday, on feeling, what's this muscle here?
I know the back one is something with a T.
Yeah.
These are your pectorals.
Yeah, pectoralis, yep.
And the back one was something with a T.
Yeah, your teres major. Yeah.
They are so hard.
I love pulling that muscle. It feels so, does it feel good? Doesn't it feel good? Yeah.
It's like the best stretch.
Yeah, really good stretch. So this is a cadaver and so we're going to start at the head. We're going to start at the head and move down to the toes, and we're only going to get through some of the things in the head today. So this is just a lateral view of the muscles of the scalp, face, and neck on a cadaver. So remember, our temporalis muscle here is over our temporal bone. And like I said, you guys are not going to have to learn every name. I especially like sternocleidomastoid muscle.
These names, man.
It's an awesome name because it tells you right where it is and where it connects. Then it's a long name, but yeah, I like that name.
Do you like the muscle man more or the skeleton more?
I see advantages in both of them.
No, but like we kind of.
You mean like these guys here?
Yeah.
I know. But it's very pretty, I think.
The
But
muscle man is pretty.
yeah, I think so.
Skeleton man.
You like scout? I don't know.
I think this guy would give me nightmares.
Yeah, I know. I've seen horror movies that use him.
Like everybody's so scared of skeletons. I'm like, man, have you seen the muscle guy? Worse.
You should look at the muscle guy if you don't like skeletons. You guys are funny. So let's start at the head. So our facial expression, listen up, our facial expression muscles are different because they insert into our skin. You can't move the skin, I don't think, pretty much anywhere else on your body like you can in your face.
Yeah, because that's attached to the bones, isn't it?
Yeah, it attaches between the skin and the bones. And I mean, try to move the skin on your arm.
No, you can't. You can maybe you can. It likes the muscle, but you can move.
Yeah, I know. It's like I can't move my skin anywhere else in my body but my face, And you can make facial expressions without moving the bone in your face, which I think is so cool. You can. I used it very often with my kids when I was mad at them without saying, "Stop that." I'd go. They knew some of my expressions. So the facial expression muscles are different because they insert into the skin, not the bone. Important in nonverbal communication. What are some expressions you guys use that people know what you're doing? Do you have any special expressions? What do you have?
Well, I don't know if I have like special ones, but my face is very loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Me too.
my expressions are even when I don't want them to show.
Uh-huh.
It's very obvious.
I love watching, some movies where, the person is watching something going on and whatever it is doesn't make sense. I love some of the expressions that they capture on people's faces. It's funnier than whatever it was that went on. It was like their expression just spoke volumes, Yeah, our expressions are awesome. Does anybody else have special expressions?
I don't know. I'll be just sitting, and if something is annoying or anything, my face just literally just goes. I don't know. It just
I
goes
didn't.
that way.
And you weren't meaning to do that? Or?
I would just be sitting bored, and I'm like, yeah, I can get through this, and my face would just suddenly go. And everybody was like, oh, no, you're so bad.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And facial expressions, you know, sometimes we can make expressions that we really didn't mean the way that the person. Have you ever done that where you did something, made a facial expression, and you didn't mean what the person took you to mean? And it's like, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean that.
I was learning about communication and stuff when I was doing my my project on emotions and everything. And it was, I found out that words are literally like they're the least important piece of information that we take in. We listen to tone and facial expressions, and that's how we what's it called? That's how we determine.
Like,
Right.
that's how you smiled and said, "I hate you." Right?
Yeah.
Like if you think it was better.
When I was in, I think it was human growth and development. We had to do a project with our dog, you know, and we had to say things in different tones that didn't match our tone, and see how our dog reacted. Like, I hate you so much. It's so hard to do. You know, it's really hard to do.
I love you, dog.
Yeah.
Just screaming.
And we had to write down how our dog took, because at that time, you know, a lot of people in my class didn't have kids, you know, and I didn't want to tell my kids I hated them, you know. Yeah, really, that would scar them for life. No matter how I said it. You know? So anyway, how do we get on this? So important. Our facial expressions are important in nonverbal communication. I think that's one of the things. I don't know if you guys know about Parkinson's disease at all. It actually leaves the person with very flat affect, and so they could be smiling or laughing, and they have this very. That is so. I know it must be frustrating for the person, for the patient, but it's really frustrating for people around them, because it's like what you're saying and how you're acting are two totally different things.
There was
Elizabeth.
I don't remember, but I studied or I researched about this girl who became so famous because she nobody could make her laugh, you know, and she used to go in these big shows and people would bet that she's gonna laugh on this comedian, she's gonna laugh. Big comedians used to stand and do comedy, and after 5 years later, people found out that she had a disease, which made her that she would be laughing, but nobody could see it. So people were like, "Yeah, we just got scammed."
No, we got scammed.
Yeah.
She couldn't laugh.
She couldn't laugh, but she was just not.
It wasn't that. Well, we used to have contests as kids to see if we could make each other laugh. You know. Yeah, I'm gonna make you laugh no matter what. Yeah. So all of our muscles in our face are innervated by cranial nerve 7, which is our facial nerve. And you guys, when we get to nerves, we will learn all of our cranial nerves. Our facial expression muscles consist of 2 groups: the muscles of the scalp and the muscles of the face. Can you guys move your scalp?
No, I can move my face.
Where is my eyebrows?
I can't move my scalp. So so here is what some of the muscles that we're using when we smile. It's the zygomaticus major. Oh, you know what I told you guys wrong yesterday? There are 3 circular muscles in our bodies. One is around our mouth, one's at the other end in our anus, and then the last one is around our eyes. Yeah. But our orbicularis oris to pucker like this, or I like that. You guys have seen The Little Mermaid. You've seen that?
Oh, yeah.
You stick your lips out like this. Anyway, mentalis muscle to pout, our platysma muscle to tense our neck, like when we're really tense, and then our angry eyebrow muscle, it's the corrugator super, and some of these I don't know how to pronounce, supercilii.
Will all of these be on the test?
Nope. Some will, but I will.
So I have to memorize all of them.
Yeah, memorize all these. Yeah, remember we have 600 of them, or more. So that's the muscles that are used in these different facial expressions here. No, you don't need to. I will let you know. Things like the temporalis, the masseter, which is a really important muscle.
The big ones will be on the test.
The big ones will
The
be on
big
the
ones.
test. Yep, yeah. So muscles of mastication. What's mastication?
Chewing.
Chewing, yep. There are 4 pairs, all innervated by cranial nerve 5. The prime movers of the jaw closure are the temporalis and the masseter. So open your mouth and close your mouth. Can you feel
Yeah.
this muscle?
Oh, wait.
Because you are using your masseter, but you're using your temporalis muscle also. Yeah. Yeah, I know. And after a while, doesn't that start if you get a big wad of bubble gum?
It hurts.
And you're using that muscle, yeah.
Yeah.
So for the muscles of mastication, there's 4 pairs. They're all innervated by cranial nerve 5. The prime movers of the jaw of jaw closure are temporalis and masseter. Grinding movements are the pterygoids, which is grinding your teeth. Some people grind their teeth at night, and
Yeah, like in the sleep. I used to do that when I was little.
they grind their teeth down. If they're grinding really hard, they can really mess their teeth up. And then your chewing is your buccinator. That's the buccinator muscle. Yeah, this muscle right here. So the muscles promoting tongue movement, there's 3 extrinsic muscles that anchor in the back of your throat and move the tongue. And that's the genioglossus, the hypoglossus, and the styloglossus. And that's not showing them here. I don't have there we are. So it's the genioglossus, the hypoglossus, listen up, and then the styloglossus. So these are all anchoring the tongue, and they make your tongue move all over the place, like you want to move your tongue.
It looks so
Weird.
odd. Being able to see
Well, that's what it looks like if you can see inside of your, yeah.
tongue is so like
Weird.
it's like just
Tongues are weird.
in there.
Tongues they're like worms or something.
Crazy.
And people that can touch their nose with their,
There are humans who can eat cow
I don't
tongues.
like that.
Yes. There are humans. Ew.
no, I don't eat organ meats, thanks. Not me. So that's the end of that one today, and we will move on Friday, tomorrow. Yep. Good job, everybody. So the students are doing their anatomy in clay figures, putting muscles on the clay, or on the skeletons. And they're doing a great job. Let's go over here and see these students. So I think we'll end up having a little contest at the end and have some of our science teachers come and judge whose is the best.
They can't know any of the names though.
They can't know who.
Who-
Yeah, we'll
who's-
take all the names off of them, so they don't know whose is whose.
Oh my goodness.
Why, they don't have favorite students, do they? So let's go over here to these folks.
And so if you look at it from the front, it sticks out in the back. So like, it's like, it's like little, and then leave that be.
Well, sorry about that.
Well, mine's already under a bunch.
What's that top one on
That
top?
delta. Okay.
Miss Steele, what are you doing? Why
Well,
are you wheeling the camera towards me?
I'm getting some video of you guys working on your skeletons. And I think that's enough. Oh. Oh. Because I